At the age of 5, my life was forever altered. I would like to repeat, at the age of 5. I was raped by Mr. Flandro starting at the age of 5 for many years. I will spare both you and I grim details. My innocence was stolen, robbed, and my childhood plagued with darkness, fear, guilt, shame, and sex. Between the ages of 5 to 8, I was not living a carefree childhood. I was talking to the baby I was sure was in my belly, promising that I would love it, protect it, and that I wouldn't let anyone hate it or hurt it. I clearly didn't understand how pregnancy worked. Once again, I was 5.
We are about to watch the Utah parole hearing of a man who has a track record of doing this to children that dates back almost 40 years. He has been caught again and again and again and handed small sentences. Many times the cases were dismissed, or a judge even gave him probation. Now, we are going to hear the survivor lay down the facts, drop a mic, and I will share the results of this parole hearing with you and all of the data in the unpacking. With that, let's jump in.
We're here on, you had 2 counts of a child. Those were both felony 2s. One of those has expired. They were consecutive. And the other one expires in October of 29. Just a quick procedural posture. We were here for an original hearing in 2006. They set this for a rehearing in 2011. And then at that time, they said they were going to set it out for 2026. But in 2017, they reset it 2 years earlier for today's date, October 24th. The board had wanted you to complete sex offense treatment program, which you have done. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to talk a little bit. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the crimes themselves. That has already been done in the original hearing. I do want to just briefly discuss the criminal history, what you have learned so far, especially through sex offense treatment program. We'll want to talk about the updated institutional progress report and the LSR&R. And then we'll go ahead and let the victim speak, and then I'll give you the last word, okay?
Okay.
So in 1984, you were convicted of forcible sexual abuse of a child. And then again in 1998 for these charges that we're looking at today. What drove you to that behavior, and especially that behavior in 1998 after you had already been convicted?
I have learned that I never controlled my sexual urges, my sexual drive. I had an extreme lack of empathy, and my drug of choice, I look at it as I look at the past as sex was my addiction, and it didn't matter to me how I got it. I chose to abuse the innocent, the people that I thought I could get away with it with. I, with these victims, I have a very hard time with myself because they were friends of the family. And I took advantage of that. They were very good family. And I manipulated and groomed them to get what I wanted for my own satisfaction. No excuse for my actions, none whatsoever. I'm seeking the help. I'm striving to try to forgive myself, but that is one of my struggles right now.
What have you learned from your experiences that would change your behavior if you were paroled?
Oh, my head is just full of it. I've talked to my therapist a lot about this and in groups. I have truly looked at the big picture. Before, everything I did was an impulse. I did not use self-control strategies. I I believe had insecurity issues, self-esteem issues as well, but cannot hold those as to why I did what I did. I don't accept it. I believe that um, the therapy has helped. I've learned about impulse control, what my fetishes were, what my triggers were and are and could be. I've learned about high risk situations and scenarios that I always put myself in. But the biggest thing I lacked that I've learned a lot of is victim empathy and having empathy for other people, which I just didn't have. Everything was about me. As I stop now, one of my best uh, preventive actions, as I think about all the thinking errors, I had every one of them and probably some new ones that they've never heard of. But I had such an interest in it that I actually taught a lot of those classes that the Department of Corrections offered when I was in Strive program. I taught those classes and stuff because I wanted to know more about even myself and why I could do such a thing that I did. I stop now and I think of the ripple effect that it has, the consequences that it can cause. And there's been several people affected by this on both sides. It's immense. And I never want to do that again. I never want to hurt anybody again. If anything, I'm looking forward to doing some volunteering with some of like ISAT or some of the groups that I've talked to my therapist about that could use some help from somebody that's been down for as long as I have, who has perpetrated as long as I have, who has had the addiction that I've had, and think that it could help a lot of people.
You mentioned you learned about what your triggers were, are, and could be. What are your triggers?
Um, the biggest thing I felt that I had in my life was I chose to ignore the addiction that I had and the impulses. I did not stay true to my values and how I was raised. I've learned that that is a must, that it's something, and over the past several years, I have learned that I can't do it without the good support that I have and being with good people and hanging out with the right environment and just making sure I'm not in places where I shouldn't be or thinking of things I shouldn't be. No pornography, uh, going to bars or strip clubs or prostitutes or anything else that might be a trigger for me to reoffend again. And just really, I just really feel like now I've got it together. And the biggest thing that helps me is thinking of the ripple effect and how much damage I've caused.
I mean, your victims in these cases were 5 and 6 years old. Are you still attracted to young children?
I don't believe that that is true. I believe that the part that hurt me the most was the innocence, is what I think attracted me. The thinking I could get away with it and that nothing would be found of it or said. And that's definitely just not true whatsoever. Because I'm glad that it was brought out and that I brought it forward. And prison has been good for me. I deserve to be here for what I've done.
I want to just briefly, I got the discharge summary from Sex Offense Treatment Program and just briefly go over that. It says that you took full responsibility and accountability for his past offenses. Do you believe that's accurate?
100%.
It said you actively participated in group sessions. You demonstrated meaningful growth. Says your attitude was positive and attentive. Says in the beginning of treatment, you had a hard time completing the assignments with specific social skills. However, he sought assistance and completed all the assignments and requirements, and you were receptive to feedback. Do you believe that's accurate?
Yes,
And okay, and it puts you at average risk to reoffend. Okay. You also got a degree from Snow College. Tell me about that.
I went to Snow College. I got two of them. I finished my associates of applied science in building construction and business management. Graduated in '09, started in '06, and became a tutor up there, lead man for Snow College. And then I did culinary arts and graduated from that program in about, I think, 2023 or 2022, I don't remember, but it wasn't too long ago. And then this program as well.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna now let the victim go ahead and speak. And could you please talk to me then? And whatever you feel like saying, please let us know.
Okay, great. Thank you. To whom it may concern, I am here today as one of many of Mr. Flandro's victims, in particular a victim of this specific case, to plead with the parole board to decline Mr. Flandro's request for parole. At the age of 5, my life was forever altered. I would like to repeat, at the age of 5. I was raped by Mr. Flandro starting at the age of 5 for many years. I will spare both you and I grim details. My innocence was stolen, robbed, and my childhood plagued with darkness, fear, guilt, shame, and sex. Between the ages of 5 to 8, I was not living a carefree childhood. I was talking to the baby I was sure was in my belly, promising that I would love it, protect it, and that I wouldn't let anyone hate it or hurt it. I clearly didn't understand how pregnancy worked. Once again, I was 5. And I was too embarrassed, ashamed, and terrified to ask questions because I couldn't let anyone know what was happening out of fear. Fear for myself, fear for my family. I was riddled with guilt, constantly asking God for forgiveness, but I had no choice. My home, my neighborhood, even my church were no longer places of peace, refuge, or safety. They were places I was violated on a continual basis. Childhood toys like Barbies and dolls were sexualized, their simple joys tainted. The actions and activities I was forced to do were repulsive and unimaginable. My next chapter in childhood was plagued with having to recall, recount, and tell strangers in explicit detail every instance I could recall in order for Mr. Flandro to be held accountable. I spent my childhood, my youth, actively being or reliving it over and over and over again. As I'm sure you are aware, it is no walk in the park for a case to go to trial. As I said, I had to tell strangers over and over and over all the things that had happened to me, all that I was forced to do. There were caseworkers, policemen, the Justice Center, therapists, lawyers. Then there were lineups, then pre-trial, many more strangers, and then trial. Not only was my childhood stolen from me, but the gift and joy, the gift and joy and innocence robbed. An entire young family's life was turned upside down. My life did not just go back to normal after Mr. Flandro was convicted. My innocence was not returned, my childhood not restored. I was served a life sentence. I do not have the luxury of applying for parole or getting an early release. I have had to learn to live and function with this life-altering trauma. It is not a program you complete. It is an ongoing process, a life sentence. Here, right now, this is not what I want to be doing today, pleading to have a rapist serve his full sentence, which was already significantly reduced due to a plea deal, one that was only taken to avoid a mistrial because the judge of the case made a comment about being absolutely appalled at the closing of the trial. I stand here today not solely for me. I was already served a life sentence, one I did not choose and did not deserve. I can't get my innocence, a carefree child back, a carefree childhood back. I stand here also for the multitudes of Mr. Flandro's other victims, which never got to see any justice, whose stories were buried, whose cases were dropped due to the witnesses being too young to have credible testimony accounts and statements. This is not the first case he was charged with. It's just the first case he couldn't bury or buy his way out of. I must be honest, in the last parole hearing, I was beyond shocked to learn that Mr. Flandro, while in prison, was able to meet and then marry someone, gaining possible access to conjugal visits. I was also very shaken up to realize the stranger in the bathroom that day was not exactly a stranger, she was his wife, but I digress. And now today I hear that he has a fiance. How can a sexual predator work on healing and overcoming his sexual addiction while simultaneously feeding it? In every previous parole request, Mr. Flandro has shown an inability to accept accountability for his actions and lacked remorse. I am assuming we will hear from someone today regarding his current or recent therapeutic programs. You did go over that a little bit. And I just want to point out that it was noted that he struggled in the beginning, and hearing that he is at average risk of reoffending is certainly not comforting. While I pray that he has been able to finally show proper remorse, take full accountability, and overcome and heal his predatory sexual addiction, I would like to once again remind you all that I and all his other victims do not have the luxury of applying for parole. I stand here today for not only myself, but for your daughters, your granddaughters, your sisters, your nieces, your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors, our neighbors, and I ask that Mr. Flandro's application for parole be denied. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. The research does show that victims of sexual abuse especially will live with that their whole lives. I'm very sorry this has happened to you, and I hope you've learned to find better peace.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Flandro, is there anything you would like to address to your victims here?
No, I just know that there's been a lot of causes for distress in the whole family on both sides, but mostly theirs. I learned that she was very ill, and I'm glad that she has recovered from that. I felt like I could have been and was a part of that years ago. Everything that I feel good about is that the only way things are going to be able to be proved is by actions. Therapy can either work or it can't. For me, at this point, it has worked. It has brought out issues that I could have never addressed or even been aware of had I not had this program and the years involved with having time to think about it. I too wish my victims luck and blessings. I truly do. And pray that they can work through that.
Okay. So one of the things that we have to consider as a board is public safety. And that's our number one priority, is to keep the public safe. You're set for, this would terminate, and I can't make a decision, right? I'm only
Right.
one board member.
Right.
But the decision that the board needs to look at is public safety and how to manage that best. And that could either be keeping you until you terminate, or to release you to parole to continue treatment in the community and to be supervised in the community and to see how you act while under supervision. Do you feel that you are safe in the community?
I absolutely do, and I absolutely look forward to having that opportunity if it arises, as well as my follow-up therapy that I have lined up, which is pretty stringent. And I have great support. I have everything lined up that I need to succeed. And I plan on the worst, hope for the best. I'm very real, I'm transparent, I'm very assertive and proactive, and know that I could do parole. And a lot of what I have and a lot of the things that I've answered that for the board would be in my board packet. And I encourage the board, please, to read the letters and the support and the packet that I have filled out, because that, including my readiness statement, things that were specifically for the board's use.
I appreciate your comments, and I have been able to review those letters, but I will go and review them again and further review the sex offender treatment memo that we received. I'll take all these notes, take all this into consideration, and then come up with one vote. And then two other members of the board would have to agree with that. We need to have a majority decide what to do. And you should hear in about 2 weeks or so. And that'll be published for everybody, but the victims can see that online as well. Is there any last thing you would like to address
No,
the board?
understood. I appreciate your time and getting this done and being here.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll go ahead and conclude today's hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flandro. Good luck, sir.
Thank you.
And they granted this cockroach. Okay. And not only insult to injury, right, in the grant, but they expedited his granting. As a matter of fact, he's free. He's walking around Utah right now. His parole hearing was October 8th, 2024. They granted this, said, you know, we're going to grant January 7, 2025. At least give the survivor a little bit of time more time to, I don't know, to just a little bit more time. But then on November 4th, 2024, they said, no, actually, we're going to let you out effective November 12th. And at the time of this recording, he's free. He's walking around. But don't worry. Have no fear. He understands his triggers. You see, he's going to stay away from porn. He's going to stay away from strip clubs. He's going to stay away, because that of course, that is where 4 and 5-year-old girls go, You can't make this stuff up. You really can't. We saw the same parole hearing. We saw someone, I'll go through the article soon of his records and his arrests. We saw what he said when he said my triggers. The programmer, do you like children? No, 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 I don't. You see, I like the innocence of it. That was my thing. I like that they were so innocent. What? This is what you've learned in what, 24 years in prison or whatever? This is what your programs taught you? I mean, which is fine. You can't teach someone. The only thing you can do to teach a roach is what to say. But this roach, he couldn't even he couldn't process the information to even know what to say, but he still gets rewarded. And we saw if you see enough of these parole hearings, especially the Connecticut ones, because they talk through their decisions openly, which I appreciate. And in Connecticut, they'll often do, depending on the sentence that the judge handed down, they will talk themselves into granting someone. And that's what I saw happen here. Remember, this guy's a parole board member. He's higher ranking than a parole interviewer. So he had a vote in this say. And he said, public safety, our biggest concern is public safety and how to manage that best. So, one option is that we keep you locked up until your full term date, which is October 10th, 2029. Thank you, Sir Richard, for providing all this information, which would have bought the survivor at least 5 more years. And as the survivor said, it would have guaranteed protection from him, from all of these children, for at least 5 more years. Or he says, as he wants to talk himself into releasing this roach, or we can release you into the community where you're under community supervision and you can get more programs. And in that logic, and we see it in Connecticut all the time, they say, we don't like just releasing someone when they get out of prison. Here's here's your $15, and here's your taxi or whatever it is, that your bus ticket, and go. And then you're gone. And then we have to just hope that you're not going to do something. So they like to say, no, you'll be under supervision. You'll have your parole officer. You'll have we can check on you. We can check your phone. We can do all that stuff. And that's why they paroled. But I call BS because it's 2024. You have the right to call a rehearing. You can say, you know what? Why don't you come back in 3 years or in 4 years? You don't need 5 years of supervision. The survivor is asking to keep him out. You can buy more time. You can wait a little bit longer. Shame on you. Why do you put monsters first? Remember, he did this over and over and over and over again. He had cases and these are only the cases where people brought him to the courts. You don't get caught 100% of the time. Who knows how long his trail of victims are? I just don't understand it. He says in his parole hearing that he's going to stay away from porn. He's going to stay away from bars. He's going to stay away from strip clubs. He didn't say that he's going to stay away from playgrounds, that he's going to stay away from preschools, that he's going to stay away from dog parks. I don't know. He's still lying, and they reward him. He has the audacity to even address the survivor. I'm sorry, I heard she was sick. Now I get that she's gotten better. I might have something to do with it. This was hard on my family. It was hard on me and and them as well. I'll go over the articles with you. There was a very angry reporter that reported on this, and I really appreciate that. You can feel at least someone sees the insanity in this. But SL County man gets year in jail for molesting 2 girls. Now, this was written in 1998. This is this initial. And when I saw that, oh my God, but what it was is that he was sentenced a year to 15 years, right? So the minimum was a year, which means he's been coming up for parole for a very long time. And this is all about the gimmicks of Utah sentencing. And they were running back to back, right? So, and that's why the first one expired, and now he's only on the final sentence. But it's a year to 15, so it is 30 years actually, up to 30 years, but it was no guarantee. As you know, he's been having parole hearings over and over and over again. 42-year-old man, Salt Lake County, has been sentenced to 1 year in jail for molesting 2 young girls despite 2 prior child sex convictions. And these are convictions. He had much more. And again, I don't know if the judge was allowed to set a minimum or if it's the Utah legislation that requires it to be a minimum of 1. It's not clear to me. 3rd District Judge Leslie Lewis imposed a sentence which includes an extended 6-year probation period if Stephen Flandro commits another crime in that period. He could go to prison for 30 years. Now, again, it's my understanding that this 6-year probation period won't be relevant. I mean, it's relevant. He's going on parole, right? If you get, then he'll only have to serve whatever time, right? He's on parole. Okay. It's not additional. Who has received probation for attacking children 3 times in the past 18 years? Okay. Listen to that. He also must complete an inpatient sex offender treatment program after serving his term. Prosecutor Dane Nolan argued that Flandro should get a prison sentence because of his previous crimes. But defense attorney Edward Brass countered that his client deserved therapy, which he has never received. Correction evaluators also recommended probation after diagnostic observation. Can you imagine the corrections evaluator at that time recommended probation, not prison? Like who is it's the lunatics running the asylum. That's really what it is, because this is the corrections evaluator. The defense attorney, I mean, I know everyone deserves a proper defense, but I still think there's something twisted in your head if this is what you're recommending. I just don't get it. I don't understand. Everyone deserves representation, but I don't understand someone who chooses to represent a choma like this. Flandro's most recent crime involves 2 West Valley girls who were about 5 to 8 years old when they were abused between 1990 and 1994. He was initially charged with 4 first-degree and 3 second-degree felonies. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree felony sexual abuse of child, each carrying a possible 1 to 15-year sentence. Now, the survivor mentioned how he had gone to trial, which is insane, but that he went to trial, right? So he went to trial. They found him guilty, but I think a statement the judge made, not this judge, but another judge, gave him reason to appeal, which is why I think he got this plea deal. That's my understanding of it. We don't have those documents on that appeal. Last year, a Salt Lake County jury acquitted Flandro of similar sexual contact with another girl. If you can imagine, some insane jury acquitted him of similar conduct. So he went to trial and beat that charge. In 1983, he had pled guilty to 3rd-degree felony forcible SA for molesting an elementary school girl and was sentenced to probation. He was given probation in 83. And in 79, he was charged with molesting 2 neighbor children, a boy and a girl. 2. And he was convicted of 1 count of 3rd-degree forcible. And you know what he served for that? We actually have that information. That initial charge, he served a whopping 2 years. It was 8/19/1983. He got out 12/27/1985. So he has, that we know of, victims, trails of victims. And he's now free. He's walking the streets of Utah. Make it make sense. And I almost forgot. They allow him visits. They allow him to procreate with another human being? Conjugal visits? He gets engaged, that breaks off, he gets married? Are you kidding me? Why would Utah allow in their legislation the rights of a serial sexual predator to have any type of contact with another person? The ability, the thought that he could potentially make a child, to bring a child into this world, it's so insane. Here's the bottom line. We just saw someone who has a trail of victims longer than we dare imagine, who has been released when clear as anyone, clear to anyone without a PhD, that can't even fake. He can't even fake empathy. He can't even fake understanding what his risks are. Here is someone who is going to be released into the world, and he has an insatiable desire and need, one that is so ca- and and here's the bottom line. Say what you will about this, say what you will about that. Even the DOC with their insane risk score evaluation puts him at a moderate risk. What is moderate? How do you define that? Is it a coin flip? Is it 30% chance? Is it 20% chance? Apparently, it's a percent chance that the DOC is willing to take. Because why not? It's just a child. Why would you risk even the smallest percent risk, the smallest chance? Why would you risk that? So he can walk free? That doesn't make sense. That's not justice. You know, this guy, he's just a clown. Sir Richard found something in 2002. He filed a lawsuit against the DOC. And you can't make this stuff up. It says he filed a complaint alleging that his slip and fall in a soapy shower violated cruel and unusual punishment clause of the Eighth Amendment. That's what he said. He slipped in a shower because it was soapy. Unusual punishment. Of course, it was dismissed. But can you even imagine what he's doing to these babies? And then he falls and he sues the DOC. That's the kind of person that you're going to reward with early freedom. But it's okay. It's just a moderate risk. We'll take a chance. What's the big deal? What's the worst that can happen?
I stand here also for the multitudes of Mr. Flandro's other victims, which never got to see any justice, whose stories were buried, whose cases were dropped, due to the witnesses being too young to have credible testimony accounts and statements. This is not the first case he was charged with. It's just the first case he couldn't bury or buy his way out of. I must be honest, in the last parole hearing, I was beyond shocked to learn that Mr. Flandro, while in prison, was able to meet and then marry someone, gaining possible access to conjugal visits. I was also very shaken up to realize the stranger in the bathroom that day was not exactly a stranger, she was his wife, but I digress. And now today I hear that he has a fiance. How can a sexual predator work on healing and overcoming his sexual addiction while simultaneously feeding it? In every previous parole request, Mr. Flandro has shown an inability to accept accountability for his actions and lacked remorse. I am assuming we will hear from someone today regarding his current or recent therapeutic programs. You did go over that a little bit. And I just want to point out that it was noted that he struggled in the beginning, and hearing that he is at average risk of reoffending is certainly not comforting. While I pray that he has been able to finally show proper remorse, take full accountability, and overcome and heal his predatory sexual addiction, I would like to once again remind you all that I and all his other victims do not have the luxury of applying for parole. I stand here today for not only myself, but for your daughters, your granddaughters, your sisters, your nieces, your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors, our neighbors, and I ask that Mr. Flandro's application for parole be denied. Thank you.